Okay, returning from break. As I stuff some of this electric communication equipment away. Okay. Lead people the right way. You need to know who your leaders are who push the us versus them in an organization, and that's not good. They're constantly creating an us versus them with management or with the leadership team. Call them out on it. And this is what it looks like. It may be a sergeant on the night shift, and this is what it looks like. They push the us versus them.
Why you gotta be on night shift?
I'm just saying night shift. Hey, no, I'd cover that during day shift. I said, look, I'm just saying night shift. Usually because they're away from the brass till you become the brass. But this is what it looks like on a night shift. So the sergeant, he's talking to his shift, and he says, all right, listen, I heard what y'all said. I'm taking it all in, and I'm going to tell you this. In the morning, I'm going in to see the chief, and I'm going to straighten this out. You can bet that. I'm going in first thing in the morning, and I'm going to tell them like it is based on what y'all told me. We're going to get that straight, bet you that. Do you want to see what that looks like in reality? When he comes to see when that guy said all that, talking big talk, this is what it looks like when he comes in to see the chief and the staff the next morning. This is what it looks like. Chief, look, the men, they told me to come in and tell you this, and I want to tell you this is what they're thinking. I told them it wasn't going to work. But I told them I'd come in, and I did, and I tell them this is what they want to do. I told them it wasn't going to work. I just want to bring that to you. Is that cool or not cool? It ain't cool. Y'all looking at each other, all four classes. People have looked at each other like that because you know who I'm talking about. I don't know who you're talking about, but you do. And they're busted on it with this training. And so, here's the deal. Guess who knows they do that? The staff knows he does that. The men and women know he does that. He's the only knucklehead that doesn't know that everyone knows it. He looks like a fool. Do the people respect it? No, they don't. I can tell you this, command doesn't respect it. They don't like it. It's not respected. Don't do that. Don't be that kind of leader who pushes the us versus them. This is something else too, like let's say you're on night shift, sergeant, and you look up, huh?
I'm not anymore, but I'm just saying.
Okay. Let's say you're the night shift sergeant. You're supposed to be at work at 6 p.m., but it's 6:15. And an officer comes through that door late, about 15 minutes late. He comes through that door late. And the sergeant looks up in front of two shifts and he says, you better be glad the chief wasn't here. He'd have had your butt for being 15 minutes late. Cool or not cool? Why? Why not cool? Why?
Because he probably did it last week.
He probably did it last week. That's good. That's probably. But why? Okay, why else?
He's showing that he's not willing to discipline. Or he's like,
The rules don't
No, you're on the right path. Continue to say what you were going to say. He's not willing to show that he is what?
the boss.
Yeah, great. He's not willing to show he's the boss. We're going to come back to that. What did you say?
rules don't apply to him.
Okay, no, that's true, but that's not what I'm looking for. What?
Transferring,
Yeah,
he's taking it off of him, so he doesn't have to discipline him, so he's putting it on the chief to do.
there you go. Say that again.
He's taking the responsibility off of himself and putting it on the chief because he don't want to deal with it.
He's
He wants
taken-
to be the bad guy.
He's taken that responsibility off of himself and transferring it to the chief. I've never heard it described like that. That's pretty cool the way you said that. And you too. You were in the area, you're looking at how to word that. He's not being a bold leader. He's sidestepping. He's kind of taking a cowardly little sidestep way out of that. Let me ask you this. Is he late? I'm Chief David Wilson. Is he late from my shift? No. Whose shift is he late? That sergeant. And that sergeant should say, not in front of everybody, hey, let me talk to you after this. And he should pull him off to the side and say, why are you late? You don't need to be late to my shift. And so that's not cool. And so let me say this, and this is probably why I was brought up here, because this is what I did at Foley. I had a eureka moment one day. So I'm sitting there going, we send our police officers off to training, and our communication officers to training, and our correction officers off to training. We do all kind of training But we take our leaders and we send them off to leadership training. So what I want to do is I want to bring them together. And I want to do this leadership training that you're hearing right now. And I want to do this leadership training with both parties together. And so far, what you're hearing, the leaders that are in the room for the other 3 classes, the leaders are hearing the exact same thing you're hearing. But they're hearing what they're supposed to do and what they're not supposed to do. Guess who else is hearing it? Everybody else. And so the leaders are hearing it, and they are aware that their people are hearing it too. And I just will tell you, excuse my language, this is what the board told me. When I did this, when I finished this at Foley and brought everybody together and all the leaders and all the people together, and we did this leadership training that we're doing right now, real deal leadership, the do's and don'ts, or what you're supposed to do, what you're not supposed to do. I had a slick sleeve officer walk up to me afterwards. He said, Chief, I'm just going to tell you, I appreciate this class because I didn't know that the leaders I didn't know they weren't supposed to be doing some of those things. And now I know. And they know I know. And when I see it in the future, this is what he said, I'm going to lay down the bullshit card. And I started laughing. I said, it was just music to my ears. I said, great. I told him the other day, I said, you know, I quote you all over this state with the BS card, don't you? What? But mission accomplished, and that's what we're doing here today. All 4 of these classes, today and yesterday, the leaders are hearing what they're supposed to be doing and what they're not supposed to be doing and how to be a real deal leader. But so are their people. And they know their people are hearing it. And this has been pretty successful at agencies. And I will tell you one other thing. That part about the sergeant looking up and saying, you better be glad Chief wasn't here, blah, blah, blah. Afterwards, one of the sergeants walked up to me and said, Chief, I want to be honest with you. I've done that a couple of times, and I didn't really realize what I was doing. So it was not an intentional thing. He did it, but he didn't really realize what it looked like. Yeah, you two describing that's one of the better ways I've heard that described. That was good stuff. If you see me limping a little bit, I've got an injury that I'm working through, and I've got a knee replacement on order. And it was supposed to be done yesterday, but I could not tell the chief no again. We had to cancel a couple of times, and he would kill me if I canceled again. So you see me limping a little bit, that's what that's about. That's got to do with riding motorcycles and such. Okay, so lead people. What's that? Yeah, buddy. Lead people the right way. It's got to be able to. You got to be able to make a tough decision, and you need to make a tough decision at the exact time it's needed. And that requires, most of the time, tough decisions requires confrontation, and we're going to talk about that. Good leaders bring up and develop their people. Let me ask you this. When I talk about a boat or a ship, what's the safest place for a ship? Where? That's just passing. No, not land. They're still in the water, but what's the safest place for a ship? Dock or harbor? That's right. The safest place for a ship is in a harbor. Well, let me ask you this. That's true, but is that what ships were made for? No, it's not. They were made to get out on the open seas. In the open seas sometimes are safe, sometimes a little rocky, sometimes flat out dangerous. But that's what ships were made for. And in the realm of leadership, it's the same thing. As a leader or a future leader, are you going to be one of these leaders that stays up in their little office and they never get to know their people? They play it safe. They only do what they have to and they just don't mix it up with their people? Or are you going to be that leader that gets out of that harbor and he or she does get out there and meet their people and get to know their people and have relationships with their people and connect with their people? Are you going to do that? And I will tell you this, there are times, I promise you this will happen sooner or later. If you do that, you will have an employee or two hurt you. They'll do something that hurts you. But I will also tell you this, it's well worth it because you got to connect with everybody. So I want you to look at it like that. You be that tide that lifts all ships up higher. And you do that through leadership, and you do that by being a leader that gets out of the harbor and gets out there and takes a risk and mixes it up and gets to know his or her people. It's so worth it. It'll change your life, and it'll change the life of them too. So you're being helped, you're helping them, but you're also being helped in leadership, and it's a good thing. Lifting people to a new level is a requirement nowadays for effective leadership. It's you bring your people up. You develop your people. Lift them up. Build up your people and build up your bosses. What are you talking about, build up your bosses? Well, at one time, and I think I described that to you earlier, that the situation Foley was in. Foley was in rough shape at one time. High crime and all that. And so when when the city council and the mayor at that time, one of their first steps was bring in a professional police chief. I don't know how they got me, but they did. But they got me. They brought me in, and we put together a leadership team and started turning that city around, turning the PD around, and start getting after the criminals. But let me tell you what else. So the city at that time, can you imagine getting 16 additional police officer positions at one time? Overnight, you get 16 new cops, new positions, 18 police cars at one time. You get this, the starting pay is raised where you have the highest starting pay in the region, probably, and one of the highest in the state. And that's a lot of commitment to your police department. So I never missed a chance to praise my bosses anytime I did public speaking. Was I sucking up to them? No, I wasn't. But I genuinely was praising my bosses. So that's not a bad thing. Build up your people, but build up your bosses as well. That's not a bad thing, because it takes all. I promise you this, Pelham PD didn't get where they're at without the full support of the mayor and council. It takes all of us. And so build up your bosses when you get a chance. So let me ask you this, as far as getting job knowledge to your people. Job knowledge to your people, okay? Do you want to be like a stream or a reservoir? And what do I mean by that? Job knowledge to your people. And so here's the deal. Say, okay, so you know what you know, but if I teach you everything I know, you may be smarter than me. So you know what you know, and if I tell you everything I know, you may be smarter than me, and so you may move up faster than me. So I don't know about that, because I'm going to have to watch that, because you may get promoted. You see where I'm going with this? No. That's an insecure leader. You get job knowledge to your people. Now, when I say it as a reservoir or a stream, what am I saying? What's an example? What would be like you've got a reservoir of knowledge. What are you doing with that job knowledge? Holding on to it. That's right. Who are you keeping it from? Everybody. What about as a stream? What are you doing with your job knowledge? Yeah, you're getting to your people in a rapid stream. That's what you should do with your job knowledge. You get it to your people as often as you can, rapidly as you can. You don't hold on to it like a reservoir. It's not cool. You develop your people. Well, what if we train up a guy and he leaves us? What if we don't and he stays? You follow me? I don't like working for imbeciles, do you? If you don't ever send somebody to training, it's what you're going to get. Send your people off to training. Some people may leave, they may leave. But you don't use that as a principle not to train people. You need to get your people to training. You need to get your people skilled in their job knowledge. You need to get job knowledge to them like a rapid stream, not a reservoir. All right, let me ask you this. Who can tell me what a bottom dweller is? I'm going to ask you what a toxic employee is, but right now I want to ask you what a bottom dweller is. And don't act like you got to take a minute to think about it either. What's a bottom dweller? Someone who does the bare minimum. Do you like working with those people? Okay, no, she said no because I'm always having to pick up their slack. That's exactly right. Okay? And so you may say, well, some people say, you know, they're going downhill, they'll hit rock bottom. Once they hit rock bottom, they gotta bounce up. That's not true. That ain't true at all. Where do catfish live? On the bottom. Do they like it there? They flourish there. They love it there. They don't come up to the top. They like it down there. So that's not true. You got bottom dwellers. They love it at the bottom. And so let me ask you, what is a toxic employee? He or she brings other people down constantly. Are they fun to work with? No. If you have a brand new employee that you're proud of hiring, do you stick that, y'all grinning over there, do you stick that employee with that toxic employee? No, you do not, Mr. FTO. You do not. Your FTOs need to be your best people. If they're not, you need to look at that. If you've got a toxic FTO, you're going to get what kind of an employee after they ride with him? A toxic employee. Because what happens to, what is a toxic employee in an organization? What kind of disease is that like? It's a cancer. Say again? It's a cancer that spreads. Thank you. So if you've got a cancer that goes unchecked, what happens to cancer? You just said it, it spreads. Okay, so as cancer is spreading and it still goes unchecked, what happens to the body? It dies. Thank you. And that will happen in your organization with toxic employees that go unchecked. It spreads like a cancer, and the professionalism and the productivity, everything good about your agency will die because it spreads like a cancer, and you better take care of it. You better address it. Now, here's the deal. I want to speak strongly about this. Your job and your goal as a leader is to make these bottom dwellers go to work. Your job as a leader is to take these toxic employees and redeem, bottom dwellers and toxic employees, your job is to redeem them if you can. Now, on some occasions over the years, I have seen a few of them redeemed and turn out to be good employees, but for the most part, So what you end up seeing is a toxic employee. She's cutting up over here trying to make me laugh. You got a toxic employee. A lot of times they will not acknowledge that they have performance deficiencies at all, regardless. See, there's some laughing over here. Y'all know what I'm talking about. You sure do. It's good feedback when you see the feedback like that. You know what I'm talking about. They will not acknowledge they have performance deficiencies, regardless of how much documentation, regardless of how much work you've done. And so, as you're grinning at me, this is what you do. After much time and energy and money and effort to get them redeemed, and they still will not be redeemed, you only have like 3 things to do with them. Number one, not out the door, not out the door, not out the door. You do. Thank you for that input, but that's not what I'm looking for. Out the door, out the door, out the door. You do 3 things with them. You take them, you love them. You take them, number 2, as high as you can. And number 3, as they said in the class today with the fish illustration, they said, number 3, you cut bait. I love that. As you see, I started using it because I learned something from the class today. But you get them gone. You get them out the door, out the door, out the door. Actually, bye-bye. You better. You have a commitment as a leader to do that because they are not redeemable. That's up to them to redeem them, to be redeemed, and they won't do it. Okay? And as you're doing that, this can weigh on you pretty heavy. So if I go home, often I went home as a police chief, and I'm with my beautiful wife and my 2 beautiful little daughters, and I'm with them at home in my chair, and my wife would look at me and say, honey, you're with us, but you're not with us. What does that mean? That's right. That's great. I'm physically there, but I'm not with you mentally. Why? Where is my mind? Where am I at? At work. So please try not to do that. Please not to bring work home with you. Sometimes you can't help it, but if you can, work on it. You need to be aware of that, and don't bring it home with you. Don't let them rent space in your head. Raise the rent, kick them out. But no, all joking aside, try not to bring that home with you. If 80% of your time, you need to look at this as a leader. If 80% of your time at work is spent on 10 or 20% of your knuckleheads, you need to look at that. You need to look at that. That's not good. You need to do something about that. What happens overnight when a toxic employee is gone? Morale goes through the ceiling. There is a rejoicing. There's a rejoicing that this person ain't with our agency anymore. Okay? A rejoicing. Do you have, and I heard this in one of the other classes where one of the employees said, you know, what I don't like about what makes me lose respect for a leader is when they will not tell me what my improvement areas are to my face, but they'll tell 10 people. That ain't cool. That's not a real deal leader. And that's why I'm talking about it. Do you have, as a leader, do you have the courage to tell your employee to his or her face what they need to hear, or do you not do that but talk behind their back? That's some real deal stuff I'm talking to you bluntly about, because that happens and it's not good. It needs to stop. You're not being a real deal leader if you do that. It ain't professional. It's not a leader. That's right, and that's a good point. If you can't fix it if you don't know what's wrong. 10 people don't need to know what's wrong with you. They probably know it anyway, but you need to know what it is to get it fixed, especially if you're open-minded to it. If you don't confront, what will happen to your people when they see the very good folks we have being overworked, and we kill them with overwork, and the very bad being retained and not confronted? What are the good people in your organization going to do? They're going to leave, or they too are going to quit working. But a lot of times they'll just flat leave you. If you do not confront, and this is not a supervisor thing, this is an everybody thing. If you work for the city of Pelham and you see somebody doing something, a fellow employee doing something they're not supposed to, and you don't do anything about it or say anything, at least say something to them about it, then you're confirming. Because if you don't confront, you're confirming that it's okay. Are you that kind of employee? No, I hope not. These folks that require this much work, it's a lot of work, and it'll wear these supervisors out. But you've got to get them confronted, and you got to get them straightened out, or get them gone. But either way, you got to deal with them. Your employees are depending on you to do that, because if it's like this in police departments, which it is across the nation, it's probably like this in your workplace as well. But across this nation, the officers, they don't really complain about the danger they face. What they complain about is that they have knucklehead fellow employees that their supervisors will do nothing about. And it makes it hard on them because they're having to work harder, and they're having to work in a negative environment because the supervisors will not deal with them. And you as a supervisor, you need to deal with them. Can it come back to haunt you if you have leadership problems, leadership not doing what they're supposed to do? Can that come back to haunt you? You dang right it can. It has, it is. We're still feeling the effects from this. The bad employees that we have, there are not many of them. Most of our employees are great employees. But the few that are knuckleheads, they're not many, but they create the most stress, the most mess, and the most drama. And you know who they are. And the supervisors have a hard time doing their job because they're having to deal with these people, putting out fires that these people create. Who can tell me what a little black book is? You got an employee that keeps a little black book on people. What does that mean? Say it again, a little louder. Keeps all the dirt written down. Look, every dot and tittle. Keeps a little book on everybody but themselves. I've never seen one of those black books successfully used. It's more of a reflection on the character or lack thereof of the person that keeps little black books on people. Pay attention to that if you know someone's got one of those. Again, like I said, most of our employees are good employees. In fact, great employees. What's the problem employee? What's a problem employee called like a road? What's a road employee? ROAD, what is that? Retired on duty, retired on active duty. That's what that means. They're on duty, but they act like they're retired. They ain't doing no work, okay? They'll be the kind that's circling the PD an hour before shift change, waiting on 6 o'clock to get here. Get out there and go to work, and then come in at shift change. But they're retired on active duty. You can't hardly get any work out of them. It's not good. It needs to be addressed. Those are bottom dwellers. They're lazy. And they can drain the energy and life from your supervisors. And we've talked about that. I've seen employees do this much work to avoid doing a police report that's this much work. It's unreal. This much work to avoid a police report of this much work. Kind of crazy. When that stuff goes on, it's allowed by supervisors that are not taking care of business. And again, there are just a few people who do this, but it causes a lot of mess and drama. So most of our folks are a joy to work with. They're a joy to be a part of. But you'll see this at this agency and any agency if you do not lead well. The challenge is not the ones we fire. The challenge is the ones we don't. And so a term that I hope that you remember and have a takeaway is a toxic protector. Please don't be a toxic protector. I want you to remember that. And again, majority of our folks are some of the best cops you could hope to work for. Progressive discipline. Progressive discipline is meant to correct and restore. A lot of times when you hear progressive discipline, it's kind of people look at it like, oh yes, it's a negative. No, it's not. Progressive discipline is your friend. And we're going to talk about progressive discipline. So let me give you this scenario. Okay, so I'm a police chief and I called in one of my guys. I said, okay, you were off duty and you were drunk at the Floribama, right? Yes, sir. And so you got into a fight with a redneck down there. Yeah, yes, sir. And you got mad and you pulled out your off-duty pistol and you shot him in the thigh. Is that right? Yes, sir. Okay, well, don't do that again. Here's your written warning. Is that how that would go? Y'all shaking your head no? What? So that's not right. What? Oh, she got fancy on me. It's something not communication either. I like that. She said she gave me 2 thumbs up. 2 thumbs up. Chief, she's been answering everything with communications. For some reason, we don't know. Oh, yeah. With confidence. He said with confidence. I love that. Okay. The crime, the punishment doesn't fit the crime that way in the opposite way. No, you don't start out with a verbal and then a written. That's progressive. No, some things are serious enough. You jump that bad boy straight up to the top and you are fired. Okay? And that actually did not happen. We didn't really have something like that happen at Floribama. Please, no, that's just a training scenario. So this is one thing that I hope that you take out of here. Progressive discipline demonstrates the agency's good faith effort to give an employee every opportunity to succeed. So if an employee does something, you call them in, you say, don't do that again, and they do it again, and you write them up, and then you talk to them about how not to do it, how to do a better job. And they do something like that again, and then you give them, let's say you give them a verbal, then you give them a written warning, and then let's say they get a couple of days off without pay. And they do it again, even after all that, and you have to end up firing them. Did you give that employee every opportunity to succeed and better themselves and learn from their mistakes? Yes, you did. And they chose not to. And so progressive discipline is a good thing. Progressive discipline is your agency's good faith effort to give every employee the opportunity to succeed. That's what we hope. But sometimes that doesn't work out, and sometimes they just have to go. Out the dough, out the dough, out the dough. Chief, I'm learning some terms in here from these folks of yours. All right, so let me ask you this. We've talked about loving and caring for our employees. What are you going to do if I'm looking over at you. What are you going to do if you have a toxic employee? Everybody knows he's a toxic employee. Nobody likes working with this toxic employee. But what are you going to do? You're the supervisor on night shift, and this employee comes in, he's toxic, and he hands you a letter of resignation. What are you going to do with that letter of resignation from this toxic employee that the whole PD knows he's a toxic employee? What are you going to do with it?
Run it upstairs as fast as
La 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 la. You hold up right there. What are you going to do with it?
I have to accept the decision, but try to understand him a little bit better and try to explain to him what he was doing wrong to make the PD feel the way, so maybe he has a better future somewhere.
Okay, and that's all been done. That's all been done. We've done it till we're blue in the face. And he gives you his letter of resignation. What are you going to do with it? Accept it. Just like that. What about all this talk we've done about caring about your employee and trying to give him a second chance? What about all that? Let's pretend like this is the letter of resignation that you're trying to turn into me. You're a toxic employee and you're trying to turn in a letter of resignation. I'm going to tell you what you do with it. Toxic employee, everybody knows that we've worked with this guy till we're blue in the face. And he's going to turn in a letter of resignation. This is what you do with this. Try to turn the letter of resignation, and you run it upstairs. And you turn that bad boy in. You snatch it out of their hands. You get possession of that letter of resignation. You write received, sign your name, and date it. And you don't give it back. You get it turned in. That's what you do when a toxic employee tries to resign. Please do not talk a toxic employee into staying. Now, y'all have heard me all serious on that. That's someone we have tried to redeem, and you know what? They see the writing on the wall, but I have had an employee or two talk a very toxic employee into staying, and I was like, oh my gosh, you did what? No. Now look, don't do like I did one time. They came in to resign, and I was so excited about it that I set them down and I typed their letter myself on my computer and had them sign it. Don't do that. That's a frowned upon by the establishment. He still resigned and was gone, but I got a little heat over that, but he's still gone. Don't do that. Don't type it for them. But what you do is you sit down, you provide pen and paper post haste, and you get it to them right there. Don't let them leave your office. Let them write it right there. Sign it, write it, sign it, and you get it from them. Be professional. All joke aside, be professional about it, but you let them resign. And you let them go do whatever they're going to do in life, because we're done here. Out the door, out the door, out the door. Goodbye, goodbye. I'll probably always use that from here on out. Good leaders are real leaders, and they impact lives. They are the real deal. And as a police department, you're already working with some of the best people on this planet. And you are a leader in a police department. So you get to deploy excellent, good employees to the field every day. And you arrive and you bring order to chaos. There ain't nothing like police work. You're in the best job, and y'all get to tell police where to go. Not many people get to do that. Dispatchers get to tell police where to go. But no, it's a great career field. Okay, so if we have toxic employees, is there such a thing as a toxic leader? Yeah, y'all answered that pretty quick. There is such a thing? You dang right there's such a thing. But how can that be? How can there be bitching, whining, and moaning, and you have stripes on? How is that possible? How can there be bitching, whining, and moaning, and you have a butter bar on? What's a butter bar? That's a lieutenant. How can that be? It happens. I don't know if it happens here, but I tell you it happens. And it doesn't, it's not restricted just to law enforcement either. It's supervisors that act like toxic leaders. That's worse than a toxic employee because you're supposed to be a leader. And again, officers nationwide, they don't complain of the danger they face. They complain more of sometimes having to deal with a toxic employee and toxic environments. That's what they complain of. It's sad. So let me say this first of all. A toxic leader, I'm not talking about a leader that's a good leader that's simply trying to get you to do your job. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about that's actually a real deal leader. But I'm talking about a real toxic leader on how they talk to you, how they treat you. Let me ask you this. Raise your hand and keep it up if you've had, and I'm going to term it like this, if you've ever had on the job at work, if you've ever had a good old-fashioned ass chewing, raise your hand and keep it up. Why you bring it up so slow? Yeah, think about it. You must only have one. You have to think about it. I've had multiple. Keep it up. Okay, only bring it down. That's everybody. Bring it down only if you didn't deserve it. Oh, pal. That's almost every time. You can bring it down. Almost every time. So, and I will tell you in leadership textbooks, you're not going to find anywhere that says, hey, give a good old-fashioned ass chewing. You're not going to see that anywhere. The closest I can see is where it's described as a significant emotional event. And I, as a police chief, have caused significant emotional events in my people's lives because they needed it. But when it's been done to me, it helped me. I've had butt chewings from sergeants, lieutenants, chiefs, even a judge one time. That was a lot of fun. Not too much. So, but it helped me. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the day in, day out, yelling, screaming at people. That's how they operate. That's their MO as a leader. It's not good. It's toxic. They're talking down to people. They like to humiliate people, embarrass people. That's not good. That's not a good leadership. And see, when you treat people like that, you may not realize this, but you're training in a bad way how maybe they may turn out to be leaders and they start yelling and screaming at people. That's not good. You don't want to be that kind of leader. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So as a leader, you need to connect with your people and build trust. Don't lord over them, mock them. Don't make fun of them. Proof of leadership is found in your followers. That's true. So, let me ask you this. As we covered the stream and the reservoir, let's cover this. If you're going to be a leader, you can be one of two types of leaders. You can either be a thermometer type leader or a thermostat type leader. So when I say you're going to be a thermometer type leader, what does a thermometer type leader do? Huh?
Keeps getting hotter and hotter,
Okay.
or keeps rising.
What? Okay. What? Say that again.
It is what it is, not what you want it to be.
Okay. So what were you saying? They're up and down. What does a thermometer do?
Goes up with the heat, goes down with the cold.
Okay. It's up and down as the climate. Is that fun to work for? No, it's not. Cold one day, hot the next. They're up and down as the wind blows. Not good. What about a thermostat leader? What does a thermostat leader come in and do? Controls. What's another word? When you go to do your thermostat, what are you doing? You're adjusting your setting. That's the word I'm trying to get you to remember. Setting. You are setting the environment. You are controlling the environment. You be that kind of leader. Now, regardless of what's going on, craziness, you come in and you set the good environment that your people need. Not up and down as the wind blows. We have enough of that. but you set the environment. I used to stop when we were in rough shape, me and my deputy chief used to stop before we'd go in, and I'd say, okay. And we would talk about how we were going to set the environment for the day. And we did. We went in, we divided and conquered, and we set the environment. That's what we did. So you need to be that kind of leader. It really is how you talk to people. Your words are critically important. Winston Churchill, you know who that is? Chief, this young man here, he's known he's beyond his knowledge is beyond, because he's known everybody I brought up that usually people his age do not know.
Did you know Adam 12?
Yes. See? That's what I'm talking about. Throw me another one. He knew it.
He knew the Duke too?
Huh? What are you doing back there? Yeah, he knew the Duke. I was impressed. I was impressed. I'm like, wow, Winston Churchill? Yeah. We have fun with people. Now, this man here, not so much.
And I'm on tape.
And you're on tape. That's right. You're on tape forever. Forever embarrassment. Can you turn the face of the camera so we know who that is? Yeah, he has a mask on. Only person in here with a mask on. Okay. Winston Churchill was very funny. Your words have power. Winston Churchill was the Prime Minister of England in World War II. He was an ally. And so one day a lady approached him in a crowd, and she was mad as a hornet at him. And she said, Mr. Prime Minister, if you were my husband, I would give you poison. He didn't even miss a beat. He looked at her, he said, lady, if I was your husband, I would drink it. Okay? He was hilarious. If you want to read up on leadership and study some leadership, because you don't have destination disease, you're going to keep learning and being a reader. Read up on Winston Churchill and see what kind of leader he was. He was a fantastic leader. It's actually a fun read. If you're that type of leader that you don't know your job anymore, you need to bring your A game. Okay? You need to bring your A game. You have a tarnished badge boss. Okay? Though that usually works itself out, because if you're a tarnished badge boss, which means you're an unethical boss, that usually works itself out because they keep doing stuff they're not supposed to, and they go to jail. To be honest with you, they end up going to jail. So that usually works itself out. But if you've been doing that kind of stuff, stop it and get right. Do the right thing and stop doing that mess. Find yourself some integrity. A lot of times they can't. Spineless boss, that's been brought up. A spineless boss. Okay, so we have an officer-involved shooting. We send our officers into something dangerous, and we had an officer-involved shooting. Chief looks at everything, everybody looks at everything, and they rule that shooting a justified shooting. It's a justified shooting until CNN rolls into town. And there's some national attention, some national pressure put on that police chief. And now all of a sudden you're starting to hear things like, well, the PD is going to take a second look and reevaluate, blah, blah, blah. What kind of message are you sending those officers that were involved in that shooting now the chief's changing his mind? What kind of message are you sending? You're not standing behind them. Spineless bosses, you're not standing behind your people. You're being one of those thermometer leaders. You're up and down as the wind blows. Not good. Let me say this. When you've done something wrong, when you wonder, you need to take some ownership of it and learn from it. Please know this. Sometimes your higher-ups, they were once younger officers. They were once younger employees. They may have done some things that they made mistakes in. They may know where you're at. They've been there before you. And so please remember that. We did. Some of us got in trouble over stuff because we made mistakes and we had to go through the same thing. So sometimes you need to remember that your higher-ups may know exactly where you're at because we may have been there. We were young once and we made mistakes. That's for free. I'm going to skip that part on the recap. So leaders care about their people. The chief has been to the FBI National Academy. I have been to the FBI National Academy. Only 2% of the nation's cops get to go to the FBI National Academy. It's a true blessing. He would agree with me on that. It's a true blessing, and we got to go. Fantastic experience. Command College, it's a great thing. But when I sent Lieutenant Sean Miller that you see on the screen here, when I sent Sean Miller to the National Academy, and my mayor jumped on the plane with me and flew to Virginia to attend his graduation, do you think that meant something forever to Sean Miller? Yes, it did. That's a leadership thing. That was very special to Sean. He'll never forget it, okay? So be that kind of leader. Be the kind of leader. Good leaders truly care about their people. So people won't go along with you if they can't get along with you. Or they will because they have to, especially in our line of work because we're paramilitary. So we may have to obey you, but we don't really like it. So I will tell you this, if that's the situation, commitment will take you places that compliance will not. So your employees may do something for you because they have to, but they don't really get along with you. But commitment will take, a committed force will take you, a committed group of employees will take you much farther than compliance will. Never underestimate that. Managers will light a fire under people. Leaders will light a fire in people. There's another class you need to watch out for. There's some psychopath leaders out there, and they just set your butt on fire. You need to be careful of them too, okay? But managers don't be a manager, be a leader. Light the fire within people. Ignite that fire inside them, not under them. Now, I'm not saying a leader might not ever have to light a butt or two, but he might. He may have to, but that's not what I'm talking about. Being an inspirational type leader. Don't be a manager.